Have I ever talked to you about Wagon Wheel by Bob Dylan? The song, you know, is written by Bob Dylan and Keith Secord, but Keith Secord wrote the lyrics. The lyrics to the verses. Dylan wrote the lyrics to the chorus. And he wrote the song, which is what I'm playing on the guitar. I'm not singing the words. And you really don't need to sing the words to find the benedy in this song. This is a benevolent comedy in the way that I describe that in art. I distinguish benedy from malady, and thus do I lose the terms comedy and tragedy because they're too useless. It's too difficult to understand what's going on. A benedy is a movie benedy is a story that moves from worse to better, and a malady is a story that moves from better to worse. That's all. That's an easy way to understand. Are the people in the story better off at the end, or are they worse off? It's that second act complication right there. And our young Americans come through and they get everything right by the third act. This is a benedy. This is a kind of a story, an American story, any which way you want to tell it. It's a story of a hard scrabble beginning where life was tough and lessons were hard. And yet we still had the love of a good woman and a family around us so that the next day we could get up and still hard work, but the mistakes we made yesterday aren't there anymore. We learned better. We're Americans. We learn from our mistakes. We are dumbass Heinz 57 puppies growing up with a world of enthusiasm and virtually no education, despite the $100,000 or so we blow on educating our children. They don't learn anything. But they are hardworking dogs, and they get the right attitude. And so they can learn from their mistakes, and they can get up every day a little bigger, a little stronger, a little smarter, a little wiser, a little more in love, and a little more committed. This is doable. I love that song, and I think it's so wonderful, but it is a nothing song. It is so simple. 1, 5, 6 minor 4, 1, 5, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. That's it. 1, 5, 6 minor 4, 1, 5, 4, 4. That's it. 1, 5, 6 minor 4, 1, 5, 4, 4. That's it. That is the music theory of Wagon Wheel. You play it with G shapes. got a capo on the 2nd fret, but you can play it wide open G. You can play it anywhere on the neck in G shapes, depending on the voice you're playing for. You can hit right in it, and this is a very singable song. It's a very group singable song, especially in the chorus. Come on, everybody sing along. I know this is a crowd pleaser for buskers and any bar band kind of musicians, garage band, bar band musicians who have to figure out how to please the crowd. It's contrary to what we expect in American pop music because it's not written in 1/4/5, it's written in 1/5/4. Great big difference in the music theory. And I've mentioned this before. At the same time that Dylan wrote this, he also wrote Knocking on Heaven's Door. Which is 1, 5, 2 minor, 2 minor, 1, 5, 4, 4. That's the great big difference between these two songs is that one uses 2 minor, the other uses 6 minor, and it's a slightly different configuration in the way that you play the chords, but that's it. These are unbelievably similar songs. If Knockin' on Heaven's Door had a really good attorney. It could sue Wagon Wheel for intellectual property theft, because Wagon Wheel is clearly borrowed from Knockin' on Heaven's Door, but I think it's probably the other way around, that Knockin' on Heaven's Door is borrowed from Wagon Wheel, because Wagon Wheel is borrowed from some ancient Scottish reel, or one or many or dozens or hundreds of ancient Scottish reels, Irish jigs, English ballads that are written 1-5 6 minor 4 1-5 4-4. Dylan was a great student of true folk music, not the folk music that the communist proto-hippies in Greenwich Village were playing in 59, 60, 61. He was there. He was playing that. He was learning all these songs from those people, but he also spent a whole lot of time with musicians who had studied Appalachian music, or the music of the Adirondacks, or had studied the English country ballad in England, had studied Scottish music in Scotland, had maybe grown up there and came here. And he was a sponge. Dylan was a sponge. He learned all of these antique folk songs. You can hear him. Girl of the North Country is him ripping off Scarborough Fair. Simon and Garfunkel ripped off Scarborough Fair also, but they didn't completely file off the serial numbers, and I think that the arrangement that they put together is so much better because of the parts that were written for Art Garfunkel. But Girl from the North Country is just totally stolen, and if you go back and listen to all of that early Dylan, you can hear again and again and again, you can hear the music he was stealing. And he was stealing the best, give him credit. Everybody wanted to criticize Dylan as a poet for allegedly ripping off, who knows, Verlaine, Rimbaud, who knows, all of these poets that he name checks in his work, but he didn't actually read those people. And Dylan was much more interested in money than in anything else. He's still a man interested in money, which is why he tours constantly. But to ascribe any terrific poetic mastery to Dylan, I think, is a mistake, because Dylan was whipping up word salad, especially after he met Andy Warhol. He was whipping up word salad that was impressive to people who were inebriated, either on alcohol or some more potent substance, but Warhol taught Dylan that pigs will eat anything, and after that, for a good 10 years, that's what Dylan produced, was awful, was garbage for pigs to eat. But the music was spectacular. The lyrics are nonsense. They really don't make any sense. If you try to parse them, there's nothing there. In many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, but the underlying music is so beautiful. And I've talked about these two songs in particular, Wagon Wheel and Knockin' on Heaven's Door, because Dylan wrote them for Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, a Sam Peckinpah movie with Chris Christopherson. Was the big star, and I guess that's why Dylan was recruited to produce the soundtrack. Mike Nichols had shown that rock and roll acts could carry a soundtrack. Easy Rider had done it, and Sam Peckinpah didn't want Dylan involved, hated him. The original cut of the movie didn't have Knockin' on Heaven's Door in it. Wagon Wheel was not used in the movie at all. And Dylan punched out a bunch of really ordinary music. I mean, just really basic, ordinary music, incredibly basic in the music theory, and really spare in the lyrics. And it just sort of looks like he checked into a hotel and said, wow, this is pretty grim. How do I get out of here in the fastest possible way? And sat down and scribbled a few songs on the back of an envelope, and he was done. The fake sheet notation, the fake book notation for these songs is really, I've given it to you. It is unbelievably simple. Bob Dylan wrote two of the greatest songs of the modern era. Knockin' on Heaven's Door has been a consistent hit forever. It gets a ton of airplay. Dylan's version, it's been covered hundreds of times by other recording acts. It is a mainstay for anyone who plays music for a living, anyone who plays music for tips, as it were, who is looking for active audience engagement in order to be compensated. Knockin' on Heaven's Door is arguably one of the most money-making songs ever written, and certainly most horizontally money-making. It makes money for everybody who plays it. And then Wagon Wheel sat around as a forgotten bootleg forever until Keith Secord and Old Crow Medicine Show turned it into another huge hit. Huge hit. Huge hit for them. Huge hit for Darius Rucker. Again, lots and lots of cover versions. There will be many, many more. And talk about busker music. You can do anything you want with it. Anywhere from a slow campfire song, which is the way I picture it in the movie. That's the way I would have shot the scene that this song should have been a part of, would have been as a campfire scene and everybody around the campfire singing those choruses. But you can take it all the way to head thrasher rock and roll and it still works. This is the way that American music works. And Dylan is slightly out of the American mainstream by writing in 1/5/4 with these two songs rather than in 1/4/5, but this is American music. And I am, in a very long-winded, roundabout way, getting around to the blurred lines decision that was handed down this week. A jury of somebody's peers decided that Blurred Lines is a ripoff of a Marvin Gaye song called Get On Up, and I don't want to opine about the technicalities of any of this because I'm not that well informed, but what I'm pointing out to you is that pop music is very, very spare in its music theory, and what you hear when you break it down, when you break a pop song down to its constituent components, when you break it down to its music theory, you find the same things over and over again. So let us talk about the blues that I normally play at church. I play the 12-bar blues. The 12-bar blues is attributed to W.C. Handy. He did not create the 12-bar blues. The 12-bar blues preceded him by at least 50 years, maybe 100 years. The 12-bar blues is African street musicians, buskers. This is busker music, better believe it. Trying to find a way to express the African American experience in a musical form that European heritage listeners would understand. And so the blues is not an African music, it is an African American music, and it is truly African American in the sense that it's written in 1/4/5. 1/4/5 is the root of all of those English country ballads, all of those Scottish reels, all of those Irish jigs, all of the music that is devolved from the Viennese waltz by way of the valleys and moors of England, of Great Britain, is 1/4/5. And all of that came to the United States, the Scots-Irish in particular, but all those John Bull English and people from the Germanic countries coming to the United States and bringing this 1/4/5 with them, this 1/4/5 chord progression, basis of, oh my goodness, zillions and zillions of songs going back centuries. And the 12-bar blues is that 1/4/5 chord progression with the addition of sevens. It's just 1/4/5 though, and it's 1/4/5 right here. Or Peggy. That's 1/4/5 in A. Peggy Sue. The catalog of Buddy Holly, but the catalog of rock and roll, the catalog of the blues, the catalog of country, of jazz, of rhythm and blues, all of rock and roll, all of pop music in the 20th century. I mean, 80% of it and more is based in 1/4/5 or 1/4/5 with sevens, the 12-bar blues. And all of rock and roll is the 12-bar blues. All of bebop in jazz is the 12-bar blues. All of it is the 12-bar blues. You have to listen carefully to find it, particularly with bebop, because bebop is taking the music theory of the 12-bar blues and carrying it out to the most elaborate possible extent, ultimately to a music theory of unlistenable music, music that cannot be listened to, that would be exceptional for engaging in torture without waterboarding, but is not listenable as music. But the 12-bar blues is 1-4-5, and all of popular music that we think of, almost all of it is 1-4-5, with some exceptions. And so I'll give you another progression. This is another one that's really common. How about 1-4-2 minor 5? Let's play it. You've heard that a zillion times. There are a zillion and one little pop tunes, especially in the late 50s, written in that. Here's another one. 1-6 minor, 2 minor, then back to the 5. We don't have a 4 in here at all. Dig out your Sam Cooke records and play that progression over and over and over again. 1-6 minor, 2 minor, 5. Play it over and over again, and you'll find it in Sam Cooke recordings over and over and over again. Not just Sam Cooke, a whole lot of rhythm and blues is written in that progression. One more is Pachelbel's Canon. You can express this as a 1-4-5. It's really not written that way because it's starting on the 4 if you want to say it that way. The way I'm playing it is starting in C. But you could say 4-1, and then you're at the 2 minor, 6 minor, 5, 4, 5, 1. If you were listening to the radio, if you've been listening to the radio for the last 10 years, you've heard Pachelbel's Canon over and over and over again. I was all across the I-10 in the summer of 2013, and I couldn't turn on the radio without hearing it. Everything I heard, including the commercials, were ripping off Pachelbel's Canon. And that's what's obscene about this Blurred Lines judgment, is that pop music is based on a very spare and limited music theory. And 98% of all of it, maybe more, is based on the same few, maybe 5 total chord progressions, and it really is a long tail. If you take the short head is the 12-bar blues. Take that away, and you've taken away 80% of all pop music, maybe more than that. Take away Pachelbel's Canon, and you've got more than 90%, and what's left is the short head, like that Sam Cooke progression. That's what we call it, is the Sam Cooke progression, because it's in everything. But you go listen to Mr. Postman, because it's there also. Written by Carole King, I think. Maybe, I don't know, it was written by Lennon McCartney. I can't remember who wrote that song. But do the Beatles catalog, do the Dylan catalog. I mean, you can go and buy sheet music, or you can go and read tabs online or whatever. Go and listen to music videos, illustrating videos on YouTube, illustrating how to play songs, and you will see that pop music is the same thing over and over and over again. The same chords, the same chord progressions, basically the same song over and over again. And it is not what is similar about those songs that make them unique works of the mind. What makes them unique is what makes them different. And that's what's obscene about this Blurred Lines verdict, is that no matter how similar the jury might want to think the one recording is to the other, they are not the same at all. And I don't believe that the people who wrote Blurred Lines ripped off Marvin Gaye in any significant way at all. They heard a song with the sound of a party in the background, and they decided to make a song with the sound of a party in the background. Well, I have some bad news for Marvin Gaye's suddenly enriched heirs, who did absolutely nothing to create the music, and certainly have done nothing to promote or advance it, to spread the music of Marvin Gaye's unique music theory, which was really, truly amazingly great. And yet, Marvin Gaye is standing on the shoulders of giants. There is Pachelbel behind him. There is W.C.B. Handy behind him. And there is the English country ballad going back forever. There is the Viennese waltz going back forever. There is the entire history of Greek music going all the way back to Athens behind Marvin Gaye. And all of the people who created that music have as much claim to that money as those grasping heirs of Marvin Gaye have to money that was earned by Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke, etc. They created something new and unique and extremely successful, and whatever there was that was there that you can say, oh, that sounds like this, or that harkens back to this, everything does. We all of us stand on the shoulders of giants, and Robin Thicke is not a giant. That's your opinion, and I really don't care. The people who like his music like his music. I'm not one of them. I like Pharrell Williams a lot. I really love Happy. I play Happy a lot on the guitar, and Happy is really interesting because it's a further elaboration of putting an African-American spin on traditional European musical forms. It's a very Western music that is nevertheless very African, and it is not at all dour in the way that the blues can sometimes be dour. I say that the blues is obscenity, but a lot of people don't treat it that way. They don't write it that way. Certainly in the lyrics they don't write it that way, and they don't perform it that way. But Happy is nothing but Happy, and it's a marvelous composition. It is a truly amazingly marvelous composition, not alone because it is so beautifully simple. And simple music is, as part of the Western tradition in music, is the simplicity of the music theory. The simplicity of the music leaves all the room for the lyric, and that's where all of that hill music and all of that hillbilly music and all of that country music and all of that plantation music and all of that city music met and merged at the intersection of 1, 4, and 5 on a Fender Stratocaster or a Gibson Les Paul guitar, and made pop music, a century's worth of pop music for every audience that wanted it. Just that one little bit of music theory. This is 145, that's all I'm doing. Just playing 145. It's not a song. It's not even, oh, somebody wrote that song. A million people wrote that song, but it's not a song at all. And you're convinced it is. And that's what's beautiful about it. And that's why the 145 has always been so perfect. It's always been so good for people who had to sell music, who had to put music out there in the world, whether they were singing behind it, playing silently, or like me, talking over it. That 145, you could just play that forever and people think you're making music, and all you're really doing is working through a chord progression. That's all you're doing. And if you want a song just like that, I'll give you one. I think I've played that before. I've been playing this song for about a year and a half. I wrote that song. Subject to further complaints from grasping heirs, I wrote that song. But I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I don't know if it's actually can be turned into a song. It's just fun. It's fun for me, but it's 145, and that's all it is. 1 and 4 and 1, 4 and 4 and 1, 5 and 4 and 5 and 4 and 5 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1. That's it. That's the whole song. The whole thing. 145. It's utterly amazing. It's an incredibly simple chord progression, and yet it is unbelievably pleasing to Western ears, to people who are attuned to Western music and to what can be done with Western music. The emotions that can be evoked without any words, strictly with the sounds of the tones of the guitar, tones on a violin, or big rich chords on a piano, or rhythm pounded out on the left hand of a piano. And it makes you feel things. It makes you remember things. And it makes you want to dance. Lawyers hate dancing. And this week they went a long way toward killing it. Killing dancing forever, killing music. It is arguably impossible now to copyright a new song and to profit from it, because anybody can claim that they own that song. And Pachelbel has a great canon. Pachelbel has a great claim to. Pachelbel's heirs have a great claim to a whole bunch of contemporary pop music, and W.C. Handy's heirs have an enormous, unbelievably valid claim to 80% of all of pop music ever, which is absurd. Absurd. W.C. Handy didn't create it in the first place. He just copyrighted it. He was the first person to copyright it. And everything that's been done with it since then is unique and perfect on its own. The similarity doesn't matter. What matters is the difference. What matters is what's new. And what's new belongs to the artist who created it, and not to anybody else. We'll talk another day about intellectual property, because that's the sad fact is that a bunch of rent seekers decided it was safe to let the federal government protect their property, and they have just seen the first act in a long string of expropriations of that property. Badly done, gentlemen, ladies. You'll learn better. In the meantime, this is the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swann. I am out of phase this week because I'm out in the world on Sunday morning, so I'm making this in advance, and I'll make it available Sunday. But bless you. Thank you so much for enduring me and my very thin gruel lecture on music theory, on the legalities of music theory. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you next Sunday. Bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye.